House Minority Whip Steny Hoyer set to roll out his party's jobs agenda this afternoon. He joins us now from Washington with a preview. I think if you are a leader once, you don't all of a sudden, you're still leading. So that's what I can't call you whip. Can I whip boy it isn't? So I'm going to go with leader. Can I still do that, or you want Steny?
No, Steny works. I've had that a lot longer than any of the others, but leader works as well, or whip, or whatever.
Anyways, great. I saw you Saturday. Great seeing you down there.
That was a fun evening.
He won, wasn't he? Wow.
He was good.
And it's the most widely watched thing ever on C-SPAN, I think. And how about now we know it was in the back of his mind?
There you go, right.
Because the weather delayed that for the bin Laden operation for a while. But all right, yeah. So what's the idea now? It's specifically manufacturing jobs we're talking about, Leader Hoyer, but jobs in general. We got a report coming out on Friday. I don't know what that's going to be like.
Well, hopefully it's going to be positive, but clearly the last election was focused, in my opinion, on two things, jobs and deficits. People wanted to get the fiscal house in order of their country, but they knew that they needed to create jobs. Very frankly, we've been here now for 4 months without jobs legislation being offered on the floor of the House of Representatives. What we're rolling out today, as we all talk about creating jobs, is a focus on job creators. We're focusing on also the psychology that we can make it in America. We can succeed, we can grab opportunities. It's a great country, but it can be an even greater country. And also focusing on make it in America. In other words, manufacture it in America, grow it in America, sell it here and around the world. There's no reason why the most productive, effective workers in the world can't compete with anybody in the world if they're given the kind of tools that they need to do so. If we have a tax policy, a regulatory policy that encourages the growth of manufacturing, growth of businesses. And the reason you focus on manufacturing, of course, is because Americans believe correctly that if America is manufacturing goods and selling them abroad, we'll continue to be a very successful country and create the kinds of jobs that are good-paying jobs with good benefits. We know that manufacturing, according to our own statistics, but also the National Association of Manufacturers, that when you create a job in manufacturing, it has a multiplier effect in the job market generally. You know,
Leader, we know the ideological divide, and it is that there are some that think that maybe the government should spend money to try to create jobs, and then the other side thinks that's just taking money somewhere. I mean, it's either going to add to the deficit or you're going to have to tax for it. That takes money away from the people that are going to be creating the jobs. Since you don't want the government really, the government sector jobs, you want private sector jobs, and that's the old divide. So I just wonder, how can you do it without adding to the deficit and taking away from the job creators themselves? How do you leave it in the private sector and induce these private companies to keep manufacturing jobs here?
Well, as the President mentioned in his State of the Union, you've got to look at tax policy, you've got to look at regulatory policy. The President is looking at both. We need to look at fiscal policy. We need to return, frankly, to the era of the 1990s when we brought deficits down and, in fact, created 4 years of surplus under Bill Clinton. That created an environment in which investors believe their capital would not be at risk by investing it. But there's also a partnership, Joe, between government and the private sector. There has to be a partnership in terms of investing in education, investing in infrastructure in our country to create the environment, the context in which enterprise, innovators, developers can in fact be successful. And that's what we want to focus on in the Make It in America agenda. Mm-hmm. We want to say to the manufacturing community, the business community, look, we need to be in partnership to grow our economy. We don't want to get in your way, but we do want to make sure that you have a context, an environment that makes you competitive globally. And I think that's the key. That's what Make It in America is going to focus on. It's going to focus on, as I say, creating jobs, but also focusing on job creators. If you're going to be pro-jobs, you need to be pro-employers who create jobs.
Yeah. Leader Hoyer, we got Ed Lazier. I'm sure you know him from
yes.
in Washington. He's here, and he's got some ideas and some comments, I think.
Well, I certainly was heartened to hear you talk about reduction of taxes and regulation. I think those are the key things in terms of focusing on long-term growth, and I'm happy to hear you focus on those. A couple of questions for you, Leader. One would be why the focus on manufacturing? I mean, obviously manufacturing is extremely important, and we certainly applaud those efforts. But we know 80% or so of the economy is in services. Most of the people are in service jobs. Do you think that focusing on manufacturing will be neglecting services and maybe essentially working on the tail rather than the dog?
And I don't think it's one or the other, very frankly. The reason we're focused on manufacturing, but we're also focused on small businesses and, yes, on services. The export of services, obviously, is a positive thing, as well as the export of goods. Goods and services both are in the marketplace, things that can grow your economy. So I agree with your observation, but what we find is the manufacturing community has retreated over the last 20 years. And with it, our ability to produce goods and services, frankly, but particularly goods to sell them in the international global marketplace has been eroded. Now, the good news is over the last 15 months, we've seen the manufacturing community grow, but still at a percentage far less than we were 20 years ago. Manufacturing jobs have a particularly positive effect on our economy, and as well on the kinds of jobs that are created in the manufacturing community. I've talked to the National Association of Manufacturers, John Engler, who heads up the Business Roundtable, Tom Donahue at the Chamber of Commerce, Rich Trumpka at the head of AFL-CIO. And one of the things, Ed, that we find about this Make It in America agenda that I think all Americans ought to be pleased with, that you can talk about Make It in America in any congressional district in America, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, and when you talk about making it in America, manufacturing it, growing it, selling it abroad, creating jobs, people shake their heads and, yeah, that's what we ought to be doing. It's a non-ideological, non-divisive, brings us together, focuses on what people really want to see, and that is the creation of jobs and economic opportunity.
Leader Hoare, we look at Canada, and we're back to taxes, though. They're going to 16.5% on the corporate tax rate. They're going down to 15 by 2012. I know people don't think that corporations really pay 35%, but there's a reason they don't, and that's because a lot of the manufacturing jobs end up overseas because they're able to do that there. It just worries me, and it must worry you, that between now and 2012, we're probably not going to get to tackling that, which might be the most important thing we could do to bring jobs back here and keep them.
I think that's Ed, right?
Yeah, that's me again. Yeah, I sound like a famous economist.
I gotcha.
Yeah, because of my background and my knowledge. But no, that probably did sound like Ed. But
let me tell you, the problem we're having when you talk about Canada or other nations in Europe or in Asia in terms of their tax policy, one of the problems is we have trouble comparing apples to apples. There was an article yesterday which pointed out that few of the other countries have the kind of preference items that we have, and therefore there's a great disparity in the tax burdens paid by one manufacturing enterprises versus another manufacturing enterprise, one sector of the economy versus another sector of the economy. We've got to have very significant tax reform, which makes our tax system simpler, in my view, reduce preference items, and bring a level playing field and a competitive playing field with the international community. Clearly, if we're going to encourage people to keep jobs here, they have to make a profit doing so. That's the incentive for staying here, and we need to make sure we create an environment which allows that to happen. I talk to people at the National Association of Manufacturers. There are people bringing jobs back to America. Why are they doing so? Because they've found that we're more productive here, more efficient, and they can, in fact, make a profit. Notwithstanding salary differentials, they can make a profit. And when you look at, for instance, BMW, a German company, manufacturing SUVs here in South Carolina, and guess what? Where are they selling them? Back in Germany. Now, if they can do it, we can do it. And in fact, we are doing it. Ford, Alan Mulally is bringing jobs back from Mexico, China, to the United States because his calculation is, and he's been very successful, that he can make a profit doing so and do so in a better way.
Yep. All right. Thanks very much, Leader Hoare.
Make it in America.
We appreciate it. Thanks. Thanks. We'll see you again soon. Okay.
You bet.